reserve system. So I guess the question is, it's their system, and now they're changing it for the reasons of their own, because they have their own agenda. And I guess also we could mention that it's, as you said, Kent, this is kind of an interesting time right now too, because we actually have people that I know that you've been looking at, people like Ron Paul, of course, that are actually looking at this idea of actually abolishing basically the Federal Reserve.
And the IRS too.
And the IRS too, exactly. So I mean, the question is, what would a consequence like this be? I mean, how would let's say that actually Ron Paul kind of gets in there and he actually does all these things that he says he's going to do. What do you think would happen if we compare it to like the rest of the world? I mean, at this point, I know that, and I don't know the mechanics of this, but China is apparently in some way buying us U.S. debt in order to actually help to stabilize the dollar a little bit. And I guess that they do this because China export most of their goods or products to the U.S., so they don't want to kind of see a total collapse of the dollar, not yet at least. But what do you think would happen if Ron Paul gets in there? Would things be more orderly and stabilized, or would there be a tremendous, upheaval for a short period?
Well, unfortunately, there were two presidents in our history who attempted to remove this type of banking. One was Abraham Lincoln with the greenbacks in the mid-1800s, the 1860s, and the other was John F. Kennedy in the 1960s, about 100 years later. Both of these presidents were assassinated by agents of the bankers for attempting to remove this type of monetary system. So, unfortunately, Henrik, if Ron Paul does get elected and he does attempt, and I say attempt, to remove the Federal Reserve, I would be expecting him to be assassinated at that point. Of course, this would create a tremendous upheaval because he would be a candidate of the people, so to speak, and there would be a tremendous upset and an echo backwards to Kennedy, and which would socially create a big problem as well. So, unfortunately, these ideas are good on the surface, but until we can remove the unlimited wealth that these people have at their beck and call, we're going to have these types of situations where we're just not going to be able to combat what they have set up, which is quite, self-protectionary in a lot of different ways. I'd also like to point out that the Federal Reserve is a private central bank, has private owners, and those owners are the wealthy, globalist, elitist families from Europe, primarily. And also, what would happen here is, with this type of a situation, they are just going to be further and further entrenched in this self-protection. So it's very difficult to even come up with a plan as to how we would go against these people. I'm at a loss as to how to address that issue personally.
I know that there are people who are actually looking into, alternative currencies. We actually had a kind of a semi-experiment, I guess, of that on a local level on one of the islands outside the west coast here in Sweden that actually kind of came up with their own currency, basically, where they were kind of exchanging different services, and they had a basically their own currency for this. I think it was referred to as the lets, if I can remember right. And I don't know if this was in other parts of Europe as well, but I know that it was up here. And this was something that, against at least at the time, legally, they couldn't, the Swedish government or the law system here couldn't do anything about it. But there was, obviously they were kind of having their eyes on it and trying to get rid of it because this was kind of bypassing the economic system. And at that point, I think that they said that if you bypass the economic system, then you're breaking the law. You don't have, they can't put out take the taxes from it and all of that stuff. So, I mean, there are things to do kind of on a local level. But since, again, I'm going back to that idea, since the bankers from day one kind of set up the system, they also set up the rules for that system, and then they have infiltrated that into the law system, and it's all interconnected. So I think on a big scale like that, it's obviously very difficult, as you say, at this time to kind of counteract that and do something about it on that level. But locally, there potentially could be solutions to this. What do you think about that?
Well, here in the U.S., they have a similar thing, which are called Liberty Dollars. Mm-hmm. And it is a gold and silver-backed private currency, which, as per the U.S. Constitution, citizens have the right to do this. But as you pointed out, which happened in your country, is happening here as well. They are doing their utmost to remove this and to not promote it and to not allow it to gain any favor or popularity with the people. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The other troubling thing about the Federal Reserve is that, as I mentioned a moment ago, with it being a private central bank, that is one of the tenets of the Communist Manifesto. Mm. So this, at this point, all 10 of those planks of the Communist Manifesto are currently in some stage of development in our country here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of people have a very hard time coming to grips with the reality of this.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, that is the case, and again, many people unfortunately seem to have to, they have to have a big chaotic, collapse or crash or turmoil in order to wake up from the system, and as things are right now, that seems to be kind of where things are leading. I mean, there have been many wars, fought in by the U.S. military abroad, different agendas here and there, Korea, Vietnam, we can, line them all up, so to speak, here. And, a consequence of this also, I mean, there's been kind of an empire building going on, and for, whatever reason, the top bankers or the elite have right now, they want to, abolish that system, get rid of that empire of the U.S., and try to merge it into another system. That is, of course, it's kind of the idea of the New World Order, of course, that they want to globalize this more in that way. But I mean, the question is what the consequences of this transition period might be. I mean, do you think that they could have interest in actually creating kind of a civil war type scenario in the U.S. Right now? Again, we could connect this with all the ideas of their reports and what they call unreported news stories about prison camps in the U.S. There is even video games, if we want to go that far, that actually is about UN troops basically going into the U.S. and trying to restore order, what have you. There are so many things like that, small facets here and there that kind of hints towards potentially where this might be going. What's your thoughts and ideas about all this?
Well, I agree with all that. it does give them the excuse to roll out things like martial law and the arresting and detaining of undesirables, which would be the truth tellers on the internet primarily at this point.
Mm.
And I did mention a few minutes ago about the idea of a civil war happening.
Mm.
And I do see that as being a very real possibility here because of the destabilization of both the economic infrastructure and also with the influx of all these illegals, aliens coming in.
Mm.
That creates, as I mentioned a moment ago, social chaos. And that is a very good circumstance for creating a civil war out of nothing.
Mm.
In fact, it's called balkanizing a country. And what they do is they will split the larger nation into smaller warring factions. So it would be the Mexican reconquistas or the reconquerors coming to fight and take back what they look upon as land that was taken from them by our country. And that would be, one of the bases of a civil war. The economic situation would be looking to create an economic parity between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, which would enable them to roll out like the Amero currency of the North American Union.
Yeah.
And all of these things are well within possibility and within their power to bring about.
Absolutely, exactly, and that is where it seems to be going right now. Again, this has to do with the idea that, again, as you mentioned, this isn't a single thing that they're playing. I mean, if they consider this to be a war that you mentioned previously, and the overtaking of a country, or what even potentially some people would say the returning of the country. After all, the U.S. broke free from UK or Britain back then, and this might have been a long process for them in order to take back what they consider to be theirs. And I mean, there are again ideas about that there has been very the war process has been slowed down, and now it's across several hundred years instead, and this is just the extension of that war, what we're seeing now. And again, this ties in all of this, the economic side, the law issues, and potentially even some kind of war scenario ties into this idea of the SPP, I guess, or the North American Union, of course, but also the what you call the Security and Prosperity Partnership, the SPP. And you mentioned that actually this recently was defeated and is dead for now, but that they will try to bring this back again.
Oh yes, absolutely. Tell us a little about the SPP. What is it, and how was it defeated? Well, basically what it is, or what it was a series of secret meetings and proposals by governmental officials from Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. who were participating in drawing up what would be the basis for a treaty, is the way I look at it. Mm. And from there, what happened is, once word got out about this to the truth movement and the patriot movements, there was so much of an outcry, and people had literally barraged the website SPP